You are ready and able to do beautiful things in this world. And after you walk through those doors today, you will only ever have two choices: love or fear. Choose love, and don't ever let fear turn you against your playful heart. Thank you so much. Thank you, Odell. I'm so honored.
That was a clip from Jim Carrey's commencement speech to Maharishi University. Now, he's clearly talking to these students in the context of faith in themselves and pursuing their creative dreams, but I think what he just said holds weight in the context of this video, and I'll explain why in greater detail later. But for now, I want to focus on how he says that fear is the enemy of love. Not hate, like a lot of people might think, but fear. So then, if that's true, what about hate? Something that's the source of so much ugliness today, yesterday, and for as long as we can remember. What is hate in relation to love, and why do we let it in our hearts? In this video, I'm going to be explaining as best I can what hatred is, why we feel it, and at the end give a few different ways we might be able to save ourselves as well as others from it. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. The support really means the world to me. So first of all, what is hate? Certainly it's more than just being really mad at someone, right? According to Sigmund Freud, hate is born from the ego as a means of self-preservation. This means that when we experience negative feelings towards someone or some group that are strong enough, we might begin to consider them a threat to our existence in some way. When this happens, Freud says that aggressive ideas and behaviors take a positive value, and hate becomes a sign of civilization. Expanding on the idea of hatred being connected to civility, we can turn our attention to Friedrich Nietsche, who wrote about the dangers of what he called the herd mentality or mob mentality. This being when people are influenced by their society to adapt beliefs and behaviors favored by the group. Nietsche warned how dangerous this was because he understood just how easy it was to bond over negative or toxic emotions. We can then see hate as a response to helplessness. As if it's just us that feel outraged, we might not think there's anything we can do to change our circumstances or environment. But with an echo chamber, validating our feelings, we feel a little more seen and ultimately a little more safe. This can also explain why some people wear hatred on their sleeve, declaring it integral to their identity, as if to say, I hate this so much that I want everyone to know it as soon as they see me. Because if they do, then we can immediately bond over it. Problematic, but it makes sense when you think about how many groups have weaponized hate to push their agenda. Though hatred is a conscious effort, our motivations can actually come from the subconscious. And in my last video, I briefly talked about psychoanalyst Carl Jung and the ego, the persona, and the shadow. The ego being your conscious mind and everything you consider yourself to be. The persona being the mask you wear, a condensed and modified version of your identity, tailor-made for the outside world. And finally, the shadow. This is the repressed self. It's everything you consider too dark, ugly, or shameful about yourself and is pushed to the depths of your subconscious. It's the part of you that you deny. So vehemently, in fact, that your mind automatically and immediately stops you from acknowledging it every time you have the chance to confront yourself. An example might be sexual repression, where a person doesn't want to acknowledge their own sexuality or promiscuity. This is dangerous because when the ego goes too long without acknowledging the shadow, this encourages what Jung calls scapegoating, which is when we project our shadow onto an outside object. Referring to the example I just stated, this would mean hating someone for being homosexual because you can't accept your own repressed homosexuality. Seeing something that reminds you of yourself, that dark and ugly part of you, can make a person instantly hate what they see if they haven't confronted their shadow. Your mind instantly perceives it as a threat because it is inside your head, so why wouldn't it be outside your head? Okay, so now that we've stated the reasons we might let hatred into our hearts, let's tackle what we can do to stop it. We should separate our answer to that question into two: how we deal with hate inwardly and on a personal level, and how we deal with it in our society. How do we share a room with a person or people who seem dedicated to disrupting our peace with vitriol? Let's focus on how to deal with other people first, and I want to be very clear when I say that the answer isn't ascribing to the idea of replacing all of the hate in the world with love. I understand that some people might be religious or spiritual and infatuated with the idea that love can conquer hate, but trying to hug someone that's literally trying to set you on fire isn't going to work 100% of the time. And just responding to someone who says they hate you with "I love you" might be what Jesus would do, but it's a pretty insufficient way of confronting active cruelty from people who have turned off their empathy toward you. Saying that love is the antidote to hate implies that you're able to love the hate out of a person, when in reality this would never work because hate isn't the absence of love, it's the distortion of love. In our darkest moments, any awful thing we say or do can become justified under love. And again, if hate is a response to helplessness and as a means of self-preservation, this isn't so much evidence of there being a lack of love, but more of an excess of fear. So instead of trying to be more like the Dalai Lama by forcing yourself to love all people just because they're people, I think we should start first with pity and look to the Stoic work Meditations written by the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius. In Meditations, Aurelius says, to do harm is to do yourself harm. To do injustice is to do yourself an injustice. It degrades you. Or I guess in other words, hurt people hurt people. We should pity someone because to hurt us or even be in the place to want to hurt us, that means they're in pain themselves. And often that pain doesn't even have anything to do with us. And they'll still feel it no matter what they say or do to us. Which brings us to the true antidote, how we deal with the hatred born from echo chambers, and that is understanding. Again, if hate is a response to helplessness and not being seen or heard, then the kindest thing we can do for someone isn't try to love them, but rather understand them. The less alone they feel, the less angry they'll feel. Even if you're committed to being enemies, it's undeniable that having someone that understands you makes life a little more worth living. This can work for both yourself and other people, as it's pretty much impossible to hate someone once you understand them. It's why we root for complex characters in cinema and fiction. We want to see them do better because we've come to connect with them and understand their journey. And it can work the same way in the real world. But okay, what happens when you have a completely justifiable reason to hate someone? What happens when someone's done or said something so disgusting, so detestable that you don't want to understand them? The only logical choice you think you have is to hate them. Now we can finally come full circle with Jim Carrey's advice at the beginning of the video. Here, Carrey is encouraging us to make our decisions based on love instead of fear. Fear, which we've identified as one of the root causes of hatred, should be disregarded in favor of love, and applying that on a personal level when it comes to letting hate into our hearts can not only be practical, but ideal. This answer that I described as ridiculous when confronting other people is the most suitable option when it comes to dealing with ourselves. If we imagine our intense emotions as something we just can't overcome no matter how much we recognize them to be poisoning us, it's logical and even kind to empower ourselves with enough self-love to make the necessary decision to abandon toxic and negative emotions. In other words, with enough practice and reinforcement, it may be possible to let love be our resolve. Our resolve in the face of overwhelming hatred or even sadness if we practice loving ourselves enough to know that accepting hate as an answer is self-destructive no matter what. I want to be clear. I'm not downplaying exactly how difficult of a task this is. It's easy to discuss in theory and almost impossible in practice, but it could be argued that it's no more difficult than battling the general anxiety or even depression brought by the human condition. We've all been angry. I could even venture to say that everyone has or will eventually feel hatred. But if we make this a part of who we are, we effectively have to kill off another part of ourselves to make room for it. And one of the kindest things you can do for yourself is ask the simple yet effective question of, is it worth it? Is it worth whatever I have to let go of in order to hold on to this hate? That might be a hard question to answer subjectively, but the objective answer is no. It's not. You deserve better than that. You deserve better than someone else's ugliness being a part of who you are. And I know maybe it's confusing and it's definitely not easy, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just let go. But that's our video for today, guys. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Let other people know. Subscribe, yada, yada, yada. If this helped you, that's awesome. Please let me know. If you think it might help somebody else, let them know. Yeah. See you guys next time.